friends, and welcome to Sunday Serenity, that time on my Snapchat where I talk about my Sunday experience in Mass and how I try to figure out what God is saying to me to help me become a better version of myself, or the best version. And apparently I'm going to have to be doing it from my car today because it is a cold one out there today. Anyway, like I have been talking about, I used this Mass journal today. It's an idea presented by Matthew Kelly. And what he says in the introduction is that he says our lives change when our habits change, which I have found to be very true. A Mass journal is a life-changing habit for an individual, a marriage, a family, a parish, and the whole church. As an individual, take it to Mass, write down one thing you sense God is trying to say to you this week, and date your entry. Then use your Mass journal in daily prayer and allow it to stimulate your conversation with God. So as you all know, I've kind of been doing this without the journal to do these Sunday Serenities. I've just been trying to focus on one thing. But now I actually have it, so maybe my Sunday Serenities will be kicked up a notch, like he says here. Listen to this. There's a part here called Listening to the Voice of God. And he says, it seems to me that our lives change for the better only and respond to what we hear with courage and generosity. Imagine every person in your parish coming to church on Sunday with a Mass journal, listening to the voice of God in their lives, looking for one way they could become the best version of themselves in that coming week. Imagine the conversations you would have with your children, your spouse, your friends, and your pastor about one thing you are each working on. Imagine the energy, imagine the renewal, imagine the possibilities. Now take it a step further. Imagine every Catholic in America coming to church on a Sunday with a Mass journal, actively seeking one way they could become a better version of themselves this week. We do have problems as a church. We are hypnotized by complexity, but I believe that one simple habit like this can turn the tide for the Catholic Church in America. Get people listening to the voice of God in their lives, and something incredible will happen. Many will say that this idea is too simple. Others will say we need to focus on the catechises of the sacrament. These are important, but until people are listening to the voice of God in their lives, they are simply incapable of absorbing the scriptures. The Sunday homily, CCD class, adult education courses, great Catholic books, and the phenomenal beauty of the sacrament. But once people are listening to the voice of God in their lives, they become sponges for everything else the church has to offer. Teaching people to listen to the voice of God in their lives is a game changer for the church. The Mass Journal is a simple and practical tool to teach Catholics how to listen to the voice of God and become continuous learners in their spiritual lives. Could one simple habit transform the Catholic Church in the United States? Could it transform your life, marriage, parish, career, spiritual life, school, business, and your appreciation of Catholicism? Yes. As disarmingly simple as it may seem, you could be holding the key to transforming the Catholic Church in America. I wonder if we are humble enough as a church to embrace such a simple strategy as a way forward. When 70% of American Catholics don't come to church on a Sunday, isn't it time someone did something? We think it is, and we hope you will join us in our efforts. I invite you to take this small journal to Mass with you each Sunday. On your way to church, join me in this simple prayer. God, show me one way this Mass I can become a better version of myself this week. Avoid the temptation to write copyist notes. Just write down one way you sense God is calling you to grow. Then date your entry. After a year, you will be able to flick through your pages of this journal and see how you have grown. 10 years from now, you'll have 10 of these small journals, and together they will tell the story of your spiritual journey throughout those years. There is genius in Catholicism. Let's rediscover it together. Matthew Kelly. Now, I'm not preachy or a Bible thumper. I don't know how to quote scripture, but I do like to try to understand it for myself and see how God works for me personally through his teachings. And most of the time, it's not even about the Bible. It's about what he presents for me in the moment. And he shows me through events. Sometimes through spiritual gifts, but most often through other people. And what I mean is that's how he reveals his presence to me. So let me get to Mass today. When I went to Mass today with this journal, prepared to sit down with a lot of doubt. A lot of doubt that anything was going to change. Like I say every week before I do this, I forget most of the Mass when I leave. I don't pay attention. I have ADD. It goes over my head and out the window. But first note, I did say that prayer that was presented in the journal on the way to Mass. I sat in there as the only Catholic in there with a journal and a pen, ready for God to speak to me. Now, if I wasn't so ready to do this, I could say to you that I felt uncomfortable and awkward being the only person there doing something like that. But God's light shined upon me right there because I felt such peace and grace, knowing that I was doing something that's going to make a difference. And it's something that I already enjoy doing anyway. And right then I was just kicking it up a notch, and maybe I'm going to be the first of many. And I'm not going to lie, there's still a part of Mass that I feel very uncomfortable with. And that's when I have to say, peace be with you, and shake hands to the person in front of me. On the side to side, I kind of sit in Mass sometimes dreading that part, but once I'm through that part, I'm fine. I don't know if it's social anxiety or what, but the point is, there still is something in church that I don't enjoy. I know that it's good for me, but I don't enjoy it. Anyway, I wrote down in chicken scratch a bunch of stuff that came to me in Mass today, and I was trying to avoid copious notes. The first thing that stuck out to me was Adam and Eve eating from the tree of good and evil when tempted by the serpent. Then the next thing that stuck out to me was the gospel, and Jesus was tempted during the 40 days of his original Lent. And if you don't know this gospel story, Jesus went into the desert to pray, which is a terrible place. Miles of hot sand, jagged rocks, and swirling dust. In the desert, there is no trees, no shade, and no green grass to rest on. During this time, the devil came to Jesus 3 times to try to trick him into something that he shouldn't do. Each time the devil appeared, he tried to trick Jesus by offering him wonderful, glorious gifts. Jesus refused each time because God's power made him strong, and he pushed the devil away. But what I wrote down here in the journal was Jesus' response after the first temptation. One does not live on bread alone, but by every word that comes forth through the mouth of God. Simply after reading everything that was said in this journal and listening to the voice of God, trying to actively do that, he was just kind of emphasizing the point for me right there. And because God speaks to me through other people, here's what happened to me next. I go up for Holy Communion, and on the way back from getting Holy Communion, I run into somebody I know from somewhere else. He says, how's it going, Ryan? It's good to see you. And then starts introducing me to all these different people that I already knew, and I never knew went to my church. Of course, I say hi to all of them, but I'm starting to feel overwhelmed because God's speaking to me like everywhere now. And he's doing it through all the actions that Long story short, because I couldn't do it this week, I'm going out for coffee and donuts with a bunch of people from my parish now next week. And the God shots didn't stop happening there either. I am on my way to my mother's house. And you all already know about the tribute, the Irish Has a Smiling Song video that I made pretty much for my grandfather. Anyway, I wrote this about it, and I showed my mother and my sister, who both started bawling their eyes out. Anyway, one thing led to another in conversation, and now there's a possibility that my mother and I may be taking a trip to Ireland at the end of. We found a affordable way of doing it, but I'm not going to get my hopes up just yet because it's still up in the air. However, back to the gospel and the readings, it seemed to me today the theme was about temptation. Right now it is Lent, and those 40 days Jesus was in the desert is what us Catholics are mirroring. Jesus was tempted in all the same ways that men are tempted. He was able to avoid temptation for those simple 40 days. His Lent enters us when we start this season. So actually, walking in his footsteps is a wondrous thing. Because during this time, we actually get the opportunity to slay some demons. We get to slay Satan, we get to slay the demon of temptation, and we get to slay the demon of resistance. And the best part of all is that God rewards us for it, as he's been showing me constantly in the best Lent ever. And I have a Serenity challenge. Nothing difficult. Just take the ideas from the Mass Journal. Write down one thing that will help you become a better version of yourself this week, no matter what kind of Christian you are.